Welcome back, everyone, to 20 Side Adventures. This week, we're going to be talking about the big announcements from Paizo and the Pathfinder 2 Remastered. Let's get right into it.
Everything will change. Everything has changed.
That's not actually true. While a great many things are changing, they seem to be nuanced and minor in most cases, and this is predominantly Paizo moving away from the OGL. So they're getting rid of SRD content, they're changing names, they're adjusting things. So it'll truly be their own game that they can use with the Orc license and no longer be a part of the OGL and all the drama around Wizards of the Coast.
How could it come to this? An army of rabble. Peasants.
Well, Wizards, when you try to steal from your content creators, lie to your loyal fan base, and send Pinkertons all around the place, you've pretty much gone full evil megacorp. And this is the dystopia, I guess, D&D now lives in. But we're here to talk about Pathfinder, and one thing I do need to kind of, I guess, correct: they're not getting rid of things from the SRD. Anything in the current publications will be completely usable. So if there is a monster that they retool or retweak that's just really integral to your world or your table, it'll still work. All the same stats will be the same. This is not a new addition. This isn't a change to the core functioning of Pathfinder 2e. This is an adjustment to some classes like an errata, which they do very frequently. Those of you who've played Pathfinder 1 will be familiar with the Unchained portions of it, where they tweaked the Barbarian, the Monk, and the Rogue to make them more viable and competitive at the table with other classes. This is really what that is. And then some other minor changes around the game, mostly revolving monsters and some terminology.
Who am I? Can I condemn this man to slavery? Pretend I do not feel his agony. This innocent who bears my face, who goes to judgment in my place. Who am I?
So probably the most jarring change that folks will hear about is the removal of alignment. Yes, you've heard it right. There is no longer any alignment, which I personally think is a great thing. I have never used alignment. Well, I should take that back. I haven't used alignment as a meaningful part of my table for quite some time. It's a great indicator. It's a good baseline to figure out a character, but it's not nuanced enough. People aren't as black and white as a two-letter initial can assign their morality. I think it's a good fundamental, and I think there's still some use for it to get a basic idea if your character lawful and are they good. They generally will follow something, whether that's the local law, their personal ethos. It gives you a lot more character creation, but I think those terminology can still be used at the table and useful for designing characters and building a foundation, but they never had a place in gameplay, and I'm happy to see that gone. It is going to replace with something that they've called in their live streams holy and unholy for those entities that it matters for. And those kind of things will apply to clerics, champions, and characters that are integral to that kind of cosmic clash. Not so much the rogue that doesn't really care about holy or unholy. So I think those are some great changes. I personally, for my homebrew, I'm going to keep those basic alignment tags on like things like deities and things like that to give you a very just quick glance and an idea of what this deity might be important or feel is important, and then they'll have their anathema and their edicts, which will be much more functional and useful. I think those are going to be a lot more important as Pathfinder continues to grow, and I think it's a much better way to design and play your character that's devoted to something, because now we can have those anathemas and those edicts applied to organizations, kingdoms, orders, and it'll all kind of have this same synergy around how your character is supposed to behave and interact with those entities, those organizations, and even those regions. It could even be countries, kingdoms, and things like that that have those things. So I think that's a much better way to approach this, and really congrats to Paizo on that change. Okay, so now for perhaps the less popular change, there are no more tieflings. Not entirely true again, but Tiefling and Aasimar have been combined into a Nephilim heritage, which will be any kind of planar background in your character. I have already done this on Eraneth for some time. I don't have Tieflings in the traditional sense because I don't have demons in the traditional sense, so it didn't make sense to have Tieflings. Instead, I have homebrew for all these different types of Aasimar, depending on which plane or entity they originate from. So as I'm converting all of that over to Pathfinder 2, I'm really excited to see what these changes are coming from Paizo and how to integrate that with my homebrew. Another one that I'm really a big fan of is they're changing genies around in Jinn. Um, I like Genie and Jim, but they always felt so very niche in what they were and their storytelling. And I really wanted much more generic elemental based beings, which it sounds like they're going to kind of lean that direction. So I'm also excited to see that change as well. And then if you still have a place where a Jinn is very thematic or some genies, the rules are all still there and they'll still work. So that's the greatest thing about this addition, this change, this remastering, because it's not an addition, is everything truly is backwards compatible, unlike what we're kind of seeing from one D&D that's coming out.
An old complaint that acts up now and again.
So the thing I'm most excited about with this announcement is Paizo taking on dragons. My world was heavily influenced by the Council of Worms campaign setting. It was one of the first ones I ended up playing in D&D. I know, a pretty strange introduction. We did, the basic dungeon running, but then the first actual book we got as a middle school group was the Council of Worms, and I just have always loved dragons. Now in Eraneth, I've kind of come to the point in my story running the game over the last 6 years again that I'm in a bit of a place with the problem with dragons, and I've been trying to figure out how to deal with it. And with converting over to 2E, the announcement from Paizo that they're approaching dragons and kind of going to categorize them in 4 basic categories around their magic. So you have your primal, your occult, your arcana, and your sacred. That all is, or I'm sorry, your divine. That is really intriguing to me. I'm excited to see what these dragons are and what their fresh look, and if this might be something to segue into my own campaign and how to move the story forward in a very meaningful way, and I'm very excited about it. So I think that's probably the thing I'm really the most interested in seeing. Most all this information is going to come out at PaizoCon at the end of the month. It seems to be all online, so if that's something folks are interested in, I'd highly encourage you to head over there and get a ticket for that. So one of the other new things that they've announced coming out will be a new heritage. They haven't told us what. That'll also be coming out at PaizoCon, so keep an eye on that. And then one other little tidbit that dropped in the live stream from Paizo, but hasn't gotten a lot of attention, is a reworking the focus points and making them more easy and streamlined. Having just really been picking up 2E, I really enjoy the way the focus system works, so I'm really also excited to see what changes happen there. Well, that's everything I've got on the announcements from Paizo and things going on this week. If you have any questions or any comments on these changes, I'd love to hear about it in the comment section here. And as always, we'll see you on our next 20-side adventure.